Welcome to the Thresholds of Reality, the podcast where we explore and examine unexplained and mysterious events, phenomena, and legends. Today we're talking to Johnny G, a paranormal investigator and spectrophilia expert. Spectrophilia being encounters of a sexual nature with the other side. So strap in as we explore the edges of the unknown. Kyle, did you put that in there? That's not our usual intro. What's going on here?
That's actually on my LinkedIn profile right now, the same image that I have going on there.
That's excellent.
Good catch.
Johnny G, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us today. So we here are all about exploring all these kind of strange phenomena that maybe we can't pin down very well with like a scientific explanation. Kyle shares his home with ghosts. Okay. I share my home with kind of the other end. I have a lot of kids in my house. There's 7 kids in my house. But
wow. Okay.
What we're interested in knowing is kind of your origin story. How did you get involved with the supernatural, and why specifically this particular area of supernatural exploration?
Okay, so as far as I can remember, I have some kind of sensitivity to electromagnetic frequencies or electromagnetic radiation. I discovered this as a young child in a car ride in a storm. I was pointing to the lightning before it hit, and my family was kind of freaked out by the fact that I was able to do this. It was predicting before lightning was hitting where it was going to be. And it wasn't just directly in front of me. I would point to the left or the right or whatever, and it would be there multiple times. I'd say at least 10 times in a row. So I just had this sense of connection with that energy. I started to also, as a teenager, start running, and I would notice that street lights would go out above me, and I was able to know what was happening. It was like a coincidence. I was just going, that's going to go out, it goes out. There was no signal or any type of fluctuation in the light. It just pops out. And after that, I was in the military, and this is where things of my origins start to get a little strange. I was telling one of my officers, my NCO, a story about this, and we were driving by a power plant that was all lit up, and exactly at that moment, the power just blew out. Like all the lights went out at the power plant, and the thing shut down. And I was explaining to him, as I go running, these street lights go out, and the power goes out. And fast forward a little bit, I'm in my unit, I'm in Special Operations Command. I was in Ranger Battalion in the Army, and they put me in a dorm. It was kind of a special situation where I was in an NCO dorm as a private, and no one was allowed in this room, or no one was given this room, or I don't know the exact kind of details of this, but they said the guy in there before went crazy and was hearing things and voices. And I was thinking, that's kind of strange. And I was walking around the compound one day, and I noticed this large satellite dish was broadcasting on direct path with that room. And right where it was basically in line, the gutters and all the metal was oxidizing more than any other place in the building. It was very strange. And I thought that was some kind of high energy output or input that was coming in, and maybe something was happening. Fast forward a little bit further, this was during 9/11, and we were at ready alert status in Ranger Battalion, which means our unit was getting prepared to be deployed. And as a young soldier, I'm walking through the barracks, and this officer approaches me, and he goes, "Hey, soldier, get in here, you got to take a shot." And I go, I don't have my med record. We're not in the medical facility. And he's like, "Don't worry about that. We don't have time. Everybody's doing this." Mind you, this is a unit it was an HHC company, which is headquarters company. There's 100 guys there, and I knew pretty much every one of them. And I'd never seen this guy before. He gives me a shot and disappears. I never see him again. I was the only person that I knew that this happened to. I started to have adverse reactions to it, kind of lost my mind a little bit, and they exited me from the military. So after that, I started to have a couple things happen to me that were very strange. Like I blacked out. In processing out of the military, I was actually isolated, and I was moving faster. I was doing things that were not normal as far as my movement, my language. I was able to mimic voices. It felt like a possession, and from what I understand and researched, and I thought this was very strange. Now, fast forward out of the military, one of the reasons I got interested in spectrophilia is I was laying down in my bed one day, and I felt some kind of sensual, sexual energy, like my body was aroused, and I felt like an inner voice talking to me or kind of narrating a situation. And I started to move like someone who was riding me, like on top of me, having sex. And this was like a waking dream. There was no finish or ejaculation, but there was some kind of orgasmic presence in what was happening to me. And I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't know what was happening. I'm a skeptic. I don't really feel like there's ghosts haunting places, but I think of more a physics or scientific approach to solving the problem and explaining away what's going on. But there's some things that I just can't explain and that have happened to me. Now, spectrophilia is sexual interactions with ghosts or spirits, but there's also demonic possession that is kind of related in terms of like the experience that's being told or explained on the internet and through the world. So I looked into this. I haven't so much become an expert on the spiritual side of things, but understanding how this might be happening is where I'm gaining expertise in the field. And I attribute it to actually microorganisms. And I have a very sound hypothesis so far that I've been developing. It's not written, it's more orally discussed in conversation. I might write a book someday about this, but I think it might explain a lot of the phenomena that are happening. Organisms inside your body, there's 100 times more DNA from microorganisms than there is human DNA inside your body. And I believe that these organisms have an autonomous nature. They are an independent entity in a collective consciousness that has sentience. I think that's what's happening. And when you have an imbalance in these microorganisms, it might possess you. It might influence you. And they can also cause hallucinations. They can also cause a breakdown in your ego, which connects you to the God part of your brain and can allow others to experience similar emotions and visualizations that you might be having in a mass hallucination. This could be an explanation. Also, they can produce electromagnetic energy. They can communicate through a complex lexicon or language, and that's where I'm thinking this could be explained. I have no evidence of this so far. There's not a lot of science that goes into collecting any type of blood samples from the people that are actually experiencing this stuff or any type of biological samples, so I don't know what the case is with that. But getting into the fun side of this stuff, the creepy, weird, fun, sexy, whatever side of things, I want to find individuals that have had experiences and capture them on film, having the experience, or reenact that. And it's pornographic in nature, so it's not going to be permitted on mainstream media. So I've opened up an OnlyFans, and I'm going to be allowing people to go in and see what I've captured and what I've actually produced or recreated. So that's where I'm at with this so far.
Well, that's fascinating. Now, let me ask you, how many of these types of experiences have you been able to capture? on film?
That is not happened yet as far as the capturing it on film. I've recreated the experience. I've walked people through a hypnotic suggestion to kind of recount the experience or to relive it and possibly invoke it. But nothing's been captured on video as far as the actual verified condition. So it's not something that I found. There are entities that people say, or situations where people feel an entity has touched them. They supplied me with a little bit of video where they see they've imagined that they capture something on film. It could be that there's some kind of like pixelation or distortion in video signal, electromagnetic interference with the capture of the film. So there's a lot of like problems with that. I want to be in the room when this stuff is happening and not just capture it on video, but see it with my own eyes and verify it with my physical being there, not just station a camera and try to collect data. So it's an ongoing process. The reason I'm reaching out to you guys is I want to actually talk to people that may have had similar experiences and try to collect the data, try to create some proof by reaching out to different experts, different people that are talking about the subject. And I thought the paranormal community on podcasts would be a great way to kind of go about doing that.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. Now, I do want to ask a little bit more about your work and the types of signs that people could look for if they're having a supernatural or spectrophilial event.
Okay. So
what are some of the signs you look for?
There's a couple common denominators that I found so far with that. One, tinnitus. Okay. The ringing in your ears. It's explained away that people damage their eardrum or some part of their inner ear from loud music exposure or sound exposure. But as I researched it, there's no definitive explanation for tinnitus, but there's a couple people that believe that it's actually an internal interpretation of the synaptic nerves firing in your brain. It's the brain activity that's causing the hum or the high-pitched frequency, not some sound externally. And I think that that's due to electromagnetic frequency. And if it's exposure from man-made equipment or something like that, or if it's an organic form of life, mind you, microbes in a presence in your body or in your environment, that's one definitive clue that I've seen and heard multiple accounts on, is each person that witnessed this or that had some experience with it had tinnitus or ringing in their ears. Okay. So that's one thing. The actual variations in emotional states change from erotic, sensual behavior to fear and panic. So there's not really an emotional kind of connection with it that's stable in terms of like understanding who might be susceptible or who's actually getting connected with it. I would say another definitive part of this is people that are open-minded and don't just close down any possibility for it to be externally generated sensations, whether it be an entity or an electromagnetic frequency that's interrupting patterns in your brain or whatever. You got to be open-minded. So open-minded, tinnitus, those are the common denominators that I've seen so far. I'm sure the clues will grow, but that's basically all I've been able to conclude after, I'd say, about 5 years of research, but not intensive research. I haven't collected data in a scientific method where I'm documenting each case after case. It's more discussion and then go, oh my God, that's I was hearing a ring in my ears, or yeah, that's what's happening. So those things.
Do nocturnal emissions not not have a role in it at all?
Nocturnal Emissions.
Like wet dreams?
So, there, in terms of the brain chemicals that you have, if you don't have the right amount of serotonin and dopamine in your brain is going to shift in a brainwave frequency that will mimic the dream state, and you'll have a conscious waking dream, not a lucid dream, but your body is at a brainwave frequency that's the same as you're sleeping if your chemistry is off in your brain. So if you're talking about nocturnal emissions, ejaculation or orgasmic states in your sleep, they're not correlated in terms of documented cases of spectrophilia. There's no correlation that I found from that. People have asked, with that experience that I talked about, was it a wet dream, that kind of sensation? I never had a wet dream myself. So I've never woken up and orgasmed and saw something that was left behind. So that's not what happened to me. But I would say that I've had lucid dreams, and that sensation was very similar, but I was fully awake and conscious of what was happening. I wasn't feeling a presence or anything like that. It was more like an internal dialogue in my head. I've asked about the internal dialogue thing, and it gets a little wanky when you do that, because people start getting their own spin on this, and they'll say, yeah, I have a demon that communicates with me, or I talk to a spirit. And this is, I can't conclude that that's real, that's imagined. So I say internal dialogue. And when they start to drift off into creating some kind of like, whole identity for what it is, I can't go there with them. I'm not going to take that journey. So that's part of what it is.
How many of these experiences have you had? Like you said, it happened once. That kind of got the ball rolling, but like, have you did that same presence return? And
of a sexual nature, I've had this happen twice, and one was feeling like someone was having sex with me. Another was I was traveling. I do erotic videos and performances, and that's kind of my connection with the paranormal spectrophilia aspect of things. I was traveling, and I was with another performer, and she said that she got pregnant with me, and she said, don't worry, I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to get an abortion. She was in France at the time. And I started to have a sensation like this fetus or organism growing inside of her was connected to me in my mind. Like the dialogue was, I was feeling the growth of this inside of me. It was like, God, such a weird sensation, but I felt like I was being impregnated and feeling a birth growing. It was a very unusual situation. Like my stomach was moving. It was like an accelerated pregnancy in my own body from what I was imagining. And I was thinking to myself, what is causing this? How is this even logically happening to me? And what does this have to do with the first incident? They're very similar in the way that they were dream-like. Like you have the sensations, but I was fully awake and fully alert. I don't have any hormonal. At the time, I didn't have an endocrine or hormonal laboratory tests done. I'm actually, that's one of the reasons I'm late. I was having a blood test earlier to find some information out, but I didn't have that to say that I had serotonin levels that were too low or dopamine levels that were too high or low or whatever. So I can't say that, but those two were sexual in nature. After I had that injection in the military, a lot of my physical movements were similar, but not sexual, in terms of like almost feeling like something was controlling my body. I felt like a video game character, and something was moving my body very fast or something. It was very bizarre. And I started to research some conspiracy theories after I came back to this country a couple years ago. right before COVID hit. And I started to name names in a Facebook group, and I was talking about the stuff that had happened to the military. Shortly after, I had a call from the Secret Service telling me that they were recruiting and were interested in me, and I was thinking this is a complete like scam or something. I took the phone number, gave it to my friends. They called to verify. They're like, yeah, don't get the government involved, whatever you're doing. I'm like, you know, I got to tell a story here. I got to tell something, what was happening. A lot of the stuff is happened later on, but I started writing down names in these Facebook groups. My computer shut down and my phone shut down at the exact same time. Were not operating, would not turn back on. It was very strange. So I don't know what the connection is yet. I've got some hypothesis in that, but in terms of the spiritual nature of an entity or an organism, maybe your collective consciousness, or not collective consciousness, your consciousness is formed from the mass of your cells and the organisms that are inside of you. Maybe the government learned how to communicate with the frequencies inside the brain to control the body. I don't know, but I'm very curious on these things. I want to know more from the people that I interact with in the supernatural, paranormal communities, and get some explanations. The sex part is fun to talk about. It grabs people's attention right away, but there's a lot of this that is not sexual. As far as other interests in the paranormal community, I would also love to capture some kind of like alien, extraterrestrial sexual encounter. There's a lot of those. Probing is one of the most commonly, Googled words, anal probing and stuff like this. Very common, but like the sexual nature of these phenomenons are engaging audiences, getting people interested. I'm interested in it. So I would love to capture that on film, which probably would never happen if the technology was that advanced. It wouldn't make any sense. But someone that might have that experience having to recreate it. So extraterrestrial encounters of a sexual nature, cryptozoology or humanoid interactions. I was talking to another podcast yesterday, and they said there's an idea that Bigfoot actually has a harem of women that he's captured or enslaved in forests in Oregon or something like that. And that's how their offspring are generated, from capturing women and having sex with them. I don't know. That's the first time I heard that stuff, but very interesting. If you could capture something on foot or on video, or you can reenact it, I'm interested in pursuing that. So,
we actually had a Bigfoot guy on here, and he actually kind of said the same thing, that Bigfoot actually courts and like gets like regular women, and that's he was going into it, how that's actually a thing that Bigfoot does. It's part of they get regular women to have sex with, and that's how they get their offspring. So that's great that someone else has told you that, because we've had Bigfoot people on tell us the same thing.
I think it's trending right now, because I've had that stuff pop up in my Twitter and my social media feeds lately about dogmen. That was another thing I was talking to someone about the other day. I'm like, what are dogmen? And they're like, you don't know what dogmen are? I'm like, it's like they're like lichen or werewolves, but they're not. And I'm like, okay. And then I see that pop up in my feed yesterday, and I'm like, okay, this is trending right now. So not a coincidence so much. It's more the algorithm that's serving us this stuff on the social media. But to find people that are actually legitimately involved with this experience and are skeptical even of themselves in it happening. Like me, I'm telling you this stuff happened, and I'm still trying to figure out how it logically works. And if there's some kind of like dysfunction with my brain or the chemistry inside me, I'm doing blood work and trying to figure out exactly what that is. But I cannot negate the things that have happened to me. I've had somewhat of demonic possession experiences, as you would call them, where my voice just completely changed. I had kind of like a bruising or almost like an allergic reaction that would form numbers on my skin, or like shapes or scratches on my skin. And it was very strange. And I feel it happening. I wasn't fearful of it. I was more curious and kind of excited that something abnormal was happening. So I'm like, what the fuck? This is unusual. And showing people, they're like, oh, that's nothing. You probably just, touched something and it happened. I'm like, no, I felt it and something was communicating with me, and that's what happened. I can't verify, or not verify, but factually state this is what it is, because there's no comparison that I've had with people that have actually had the experience that are sound in their logic. It gets into God or some kind of belief that just ends at the explanation is it's a spirit or magic. And I'm not into that so much. I have to figure out, like, biologically what would be causing my chemicals in my skin to do that. So,
To go back to that tinnitus and the serotonin chemical imbalancing, it's funny. It's because, like we were saying earlier, I have a sensitivity to the paranormal where, like, you know what I mean? Like, I see the ghosts that are in my house and walk around. And it's funny that you say that is because I have horrible tinnitus. Like, it is so loud, and on top of that, I have serotonin dopamine imbalance that I take stuff for, to help me regulate. And I wonder, saying that is maybe that is a connection to being more sensitive to the paranormal.
so I lived in China for a while, and the Chinese have a different practice for medicine and diagnosis for problems. And they believe that there's no disease, there's only imbalance. So if your brain chemistry is out of balance, your microbiology inside of your gut biome might be completely out of whack. And actually, that speaks to your endocrine system, and your hormones are released to basically tell you to get the resources that they need to thrive. So if, let's say, you have an imbalance of yeast in your gut biome, your brain will actually get signals to go eat sugar, not because you're craving the sugar, because they are. Okay? So you might have some kind of imbalance which is causing that to happen, and then the neurology might be causing some kind of neurochemical reaction or synaptic firing that you have ringing in your ears from. Okay? Could be that. Could be. I've noticed. I'm 44, so I'm not a super young guy. But when we were kids, you guys are pretty close to my age. When we were kids, there was no Wi-Fi. Okay, there was no electromagnetic energy besides the TV signal. And when you walked near the rabbit ears, something would move, and you'd see the screen changing a little bit from your electromagnetic energy interacting with that. I would hear a light bulb ringing, like the tinnitus in my ear when someone turned an incandescent bulb on. I knew there was electricity flowing. Now, with those Wi-Fi units all over the place, it's constant. That 5G, that electromagnetic frequency that's constantly hitting us all the time, I think that could be causing signals to have either interruptions, disruptions, or something like that. And we could be interacting with another dimension. I have no clue on that. I mean, maybe all of this electromagnetic energy is allowing us to resonate more closely with another universe or another dimension or a parallel world or something like that. I don't know, but it seems like that is, like I said, you're sensitive to it. It's a common denominator when you have that happening. I have a friend that's sensitive to the touch with cell phones. When they're vibrating or when they're about to ring, he feels his hand burning. And I don't know if he's caused that reaction through conditioning or something, but he's super sensitive to that kind of stuff. He doesn't want that thing near him when he's sleeping. He turns his electronics off all over the house. And yeah, it's some people are even more so.
I imagine he doesn't get a good night's sleep if he keeps everything on then, because as everything's getting signal in and out, well, I imagine it's hitting him. And
I would say that the connection with the sex part here, this particular friend that I was mentioning, he loves porn. I'm involved with the erotic adult industry, um, he's sleeping well because he's coming before he goes to bed. I mean, that maybe an uprise in our consumption of porn is a way to deal with the stress that we're having from the electromagnetic energy that's coming at us all the time. Because one of the things that's happening is you're getting an instant dopamine rush from an orgasm, and you're getting an instant dopamine rush from food, and they're super easy to get to in our world as a human. So they're the first one to kind of satisfy that craving for relaxation or for joy. It's not an enrichment activity. It's not painting a picture. It's I'm gonna go jerk off after I watch Pornhub. It's that's how people are now. So it's cultivating and kind of creating a circular loop of interactions with what you're exposed to and then what you need to actually relax. Okay. But there's also a rise in paranormal and supernatural reality and television series out there. I mean, I think there's now over 100 that I found throughout the world for paranormal television shows. So if people are looking and trying to question the world on why all this stuff is happening, they're not looking at the fundamentals. They're just looking at legend. And I don't think that's the only thing to look at. I think that we should be looking at, like, what did you eat today? That's a big part of it. You know, is your phone next to your brain every time you're putting your head down? It's
That's
whatever.
Interesting you mentioned phones, because there was a time when I would keep my cell phone in my chest pocket right over my heart, and I started to develop heart pain, like what do they call it? Myocarditis or pericarditis. And I was like, is this my phone? And so I took my phone out of my pocket, and it went away immediately. And so a lot of what you're saying kind of resonates with me on that level, that yeah, these electromagnetic signals or radio signals or cell phone signals, they do have an effect on our biology. And I think it's worth studying how deep or on what levels are we being affected by that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So you had this happen with your cell phone. There's a movie, I cannot recall at the moment, but in this movie, there's a scene when a little boy, he's driving in a car, and he's got a special ability, and his father's like, watch this. And the kid is singing in the back seat, and he starts speaking Spanish. And then the passenger or the driver turns on the radio, and the kid is singing the song on the radio. And then he's changed the station, and it's an AM radio program or a radio program in Spanish. And he's doing the exact speech that he heard on the stereo before it was turned on. And this made me think about the electromagnetic energy and how your brain is kind of like a radio tuner. So maybe the people that are tuning into the sensitivity of entities or a different realm or something like that, they just dialed in that radio station. And that basically that frequency of electromagnetic spectrum that you might be hearing with spirits in your house, you just dialed into it. You put that on your preset as one of the stations, and now you're seeing it and hearing it more frequently. That could be a possibility. I had these incidents in the military, which made me think superpowers, government experiments, super soldier project, like all this stuff went through my head. I actually was a personal trainer 20 years ago, and one of my clients, his name was Joe Harris, and he was the writer for Wolverine. And I was telling him about what happened to me, and he's like, oh, classic super soldier project. I'm like, dude, I have no clue. It was not like me being in a laboratory. It was in an office. This guy just calls me in and says, hey, soldier, you're going to take this. It wasn't like, a bunch of lab coats standing around watching me. There's no cameras, nothing. So I can't say that was the situation that happened to me. But regardless of what happened, it caused me to create some kind of like connection with that moment that makes me think back. Maybe the microorganisms or the vaccine or whatever they gave me, maybe I dialed into that maybe I communicated with that frequency or that particular organism, and it's making me connect with other things. Because there's a lot of coincidental behavior that's come into my life, and some traumatizing things that have happened, and some government involvement, which was very odd too. So
Yeah, so it sounds like maybe they were. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of MK Ultra, right?
yeah,
It sounds like something like the men who stare at goats kind of thing, and maybe they were doing something to you based on your experience with your NCO at the power plant, right? So you were jogging with him before that happened, right?
well, we were in a car, but yeah, we were driving. My NCO. He was only my squad leader, or my team leader. It wasn't even the squad leader, so not very high up. He wouldn't be briefed in some type of project like that. But every transmission that we had through cell phone was monitored. Every single thing on the base was monitored by equipment that basically processed any key words or anything like that, sensations or hesitations in voice, a lot of things. Everything was monitored. So maybe, we're sitting in the car, and the coincidence between that and me, there was also an expert there that was a psychologist, and it was very unusual because they were making me do like examinations for intelligence and different things. They did this to they didn't do that for all soldiers, but they had every soldier go through this briefing and say that we had to give them DNA samples and sign away something, and it was for Special Operations Command, and we were all just like, yeah, whatever, it's just a sheet of paper, blah blah. So we signed that. A couple of my unit guys were taken in and computer scanned, laser scanned into the computer. And we had digital warfare training right next to our unit, which was, from what I'd heard, collaborating with Modern Warfare, the game, and making the world engine that they have. So I started to get really paranoid after I saw some things called Hivemind conspiracy, which right after I left the military, there was a earplug lawsuit for tinnitus. Okay. And it was for the exact year after I left. And I started this tinnitus thing in the started noticing it in the military more. Okay. But this hive mind technology was basically a technology to where people can communicate without cell phones or without devices. They can kind of telepathically communicate, and they can do this in groups, and they can do it through satellite link or some kind of external broadcast. And it was really bizarre. It was making me freak out a little bit, because what they had done in this one video is create a complete biological model of a human being and put them into the computer. Like on a cellular DNA level, they replicated every aspect of that being, and they were able to, through the brainwave frequencies of the model that they created, basically connect with the host or the person that was actually modeled. Okay.
Wow.
And I started thinking about, okay, this guy in my unit was scanned. This guy's an expert figuring out who to get into the military. They're doing all these different experiments with me as far as my intelligence and my abilities and stuff like that. Then these superhuman feats started coming on. Like I was able to do splits again since I was a little kid. I haven't been able to do that. Kicking and punching faster and more precision than I ever been able to do, blindfold or with my eyes closed. It was very bizarre, and it felt like exciting because I'm like, what's going on? But I felt like I was a remote controlled person when this was happening, and there was a lot of internal dialogue that was happening. That was after that shot, and I was like, okay, this is really bizarre.
How do you have those effects? Did they slowly wear away? Are they still around? Or
so it's present, but it felt like, the way that I would explain it is very intense at that particular moment in time. I fast, or occasionally I fast. I don't fast as much anymore, but fasting without food or water, no food for a week. Okay. And I do this to basically create discipline within my body and to clean out my system, because your body actually processes food and repairs cellular damage more effectively without the presence of food or digestion required. So when I was fasting, I felt more connected to this whatever it was. I had an incident right before 9/11, right before I told you my phone cut out and all that stuff. I was in Colombia, and I was traveling, and I was actually looking to create porn down in Colombia and South America. And I had this strange situation where I'm at a gym, and this woman starts talking to me, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm from the United States." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." She's like, "You want to go talk?" And I'm like, "Sure." She's older than me. She tells me that she's a CIA consultant and that she wrote several books on human trafficking. And I told her what I was doing, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm just I'm evaluating you right now. You're just blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Hey, look, I'm not trying to do any human trafficking." Right after that, I had some bizarre situation happen. I was in a hostel. I felt like something was stolen. I went through my bags. I contacted the people, and there was a Ukrainian or Russian guy in my room that was making noise, and it was bizarre the way the kind of things were working out. Fast forward, I'm about to leave the country. I'm sitting in an airport, and I black out completely. And I wake up a couple weeks later, and I'm in a hospital, and I was on the news in 59 countries and deported because I apparently got inside of a taxi, driving the taxi, and drove over two people. And then the police shot at me and shot through the windshield. The bullet fragmented and hit me here.
No way.
Yeah.
You're freaking kidding me.
No. And I didn't know what was going on. The media, I was an influencer at the time. I was a social media travel influencer. I was getting free hotels and all kinds of stuff, telling stories, had a great life, and it killed my reputation. I had to reinvent myself. So I went into the adult industry, and I wrote a book, and now I'm merging that with my interests in finding out what happened to me.
All right. So, Johnny, I have to just say, I think you've missed an opportunity here. You
What?
were Jason Bourne. You could be Jason Porn.
You know, there's a lot of things that I thought were kind of cool about that. The coincidences of me when I was traveling were very bizarre too. Like I was 1 degree away from a world leader in every country. I would go on radio with the top DJ. I would go into the news stations and talk to the top newscasters in the countries. And I was in Russia, China, right before incidents happened in each country. Like it was bizarre for things that happened. And
you're like a sleeper cell.
That, people talked about the Manchurian Candidate or something like that when I was talking about it. Have you ever seen Spies Like Us?
Yeah.
I think that my role was more distractionary. If that were the case, I think that I'm completely plausible deniability, or there's no deniability. I have no connection, no handler, nothing like that. I'm not paid by the military. I'm not like funded by the government. Well, technically, but as far as like my mission, I don't have like go kill this guy kind of mission, or like, intercept target, take briefcase. It's more like, hey, go talk to this person. Oh, introduce yourself to this person. Talk about this topic. Bring attention to I was in Venezuela when they were having their basic collapse of their economy with their currency. I was one of 2 Americans in the country. And I snuck into the country. So,
no.
Yeah, I snuck into the border, and I'm on the back of a motorcycle. This kid, he's like, "You want to ride?" I'm like, "Sure." And I get on the back of a motorcycle. There's literally like cannons and like machine guns and all kinds of shit at the border, like blocking everything off. And I just zip right by on a motorcycle. And I'm like, if they stop me, they can literally kill me if they wanted to. Like we were kind of like their adversary at that time. So I got
Johnny,
there. Yeah.
That's intense, man.
Yeah. It was interesting. But I would say
That's all you have to say. It was interesting.
Well,
Oh my gosh.
I'm not Jason Bourne. I'm more like Spies Like Us. That's basically,
Yeah, doctor.
Yeah, doctor. Yeah, I would say that would be my role. Now, I almost feel like I'm trapped in South Florida in paradise. It's kind of like weird, but
speaking of Florida, we've kind of gone in. We started out Spectrophilia. Now we're all on no-fly lists.
Wait, before you get to that, you know,
blacklisted a little bit, but
did you happen to watch Moon Knight? The Moon
Yeah.
Knight series on Disney?
that Moon Knight is exactly. I told my brother this. I'm like, that feeling that I had when I was in Colombia is exactly the same as Moon Knight.
That's exactly what popped in my head.
Oh my God.
I'm just like, where the fuck am I? Like, what just happened? And I'm looking at myself, and I've got blood pouring down my face, and then I wake up and I'm in a hospital. I was in a prison for a little while, on a laundry fucking like line hole like post, chained up to the laundry line post, and they're tasing me with a cattle prod, and I'm naked, and I'm like, where? Then I black out again. I'm like, where the fuck am I? This is so bizarre.
This is wild. This is
Yeah.
wild stuff,
You
Johnny.
don't even know how you ended up there or why you ended up there. You just woke up and you're just being.
Well, I understand after, like, I watched the media clips of me and what happened. They tried to lynch me and hang me. The civilians did. The police shot at me, yeah, and then they tried to. I have the video on my Twitter. But,
Wait, so how did you get out of there?
From the video that I saw, I think the police pulled me out of the car. So I don't know, but I remember being in darkness, being in a hospital. Then there was a weird point where I felt like I was in a hospital, but it wasn't a real hospital. And someone was sewing me up. I had like, and then I'm like, I was trying to figure out, I had a scar on the back of my head with stitches. And I'm like, how the fuck, what happened to me? Like, I didn't know what was happening to me. And it was really bizarre. I was in the prison thing because I basically almost murdered 2 people. So
Right. You said you ran them over, right?
yeah. Here's another weird little thing. All of this disappeared. I have no record, no problems. I'm completely fine.
Just got written off and just disappeared. Were the people you ran over, were they important people or were they just random people?
I think it was a woman and a child or something like that. I don't remember too much about what was happening.
Like they were more like collateral damage and whatever else was going on.
I remember like it was just like in Moon Knight where you're there, something's happening, you black out, and then something fucking weird is happening around you, and then blacking out, and just absences of time. It was so bizarre. And I after watching that series, I'm like, man, is this how schizophrenia is or something like that? Like I started to research schizophrenia to figure things out with that, but it didn't make sense for what was the purpose of all that and how
all that arose after the CIA consultant came and sat down with you.
So there's more to it than that. Going back to Hawaii and China. So there's some other things that were happening in Hawaii and China. I started my tour around all of the Americas. I went to every major city of the United States. Then I went to Mexico, every major city. Then I went to all the Latin American countries, and I ended in Venezuela. Then I hitchhiked across the border to get back into Colombia. I dated a girl in Colombia for several months. And at one point, the CIA was there.
Probably Shakira.
No, but I was connected with. I actually went to Shakira's concert and I had backstage passes in Argentina. So wow. Yeah, and that was kind of an interesting story as well because I just walked up to the gate and I said I want free tickets and talked to the manager and they gave me free backstage passes and tickets and it was sold out concert. So, but as far as like
That was like a Jedi mind trick you just pulled.
no, it's more.
You
like,
waved your hand and they let you backstage. Don't tell me that's not a Jedi mind trick. You're freaking Jedi, Johnny.
It wasn't like that though, because I learned how to influence people, and it was from my travels. I basically had evidence of everything I was doing on social media, and I'm like, here I'm at this concert, here I'm at this dive place. They're giving me these things for free. You see the guy giving me free tickets and free passes, and you feel like, oh, well, if they did it, I could do it too. So it was.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it wasn't too difficult to make that happen. But I was testing my Jason Bourne abilities when I was traveling, because I'm like, I did this without a driver's license and a passport in many places. I got free hotel rooms with no ID. I got free airfare and boat travel. I went across international waters with no passport on a ferry. Like, it was bizarre at some of the things that I was able to do, but it was not magical. It was more like just understanding human hacking. So that was kind of the thing. But that incident with the CIA, I was going to mention something about the boat that I was on in Hawaii. I was living on a boat. I had Air Force military intelligence visit me. I had a 33rd degree Mason from the Ukrainian military intelligence connect with me. And I had this weird Ukrainian guy show up on the boat. He weirded everybody out. It was a strange situation. And he had this alarm that was going off on the boat at an absurd hour. And everybody was like, turn the fucking thing off. Like, the guy didn't turn it off. And it was just a weird, eerie situation that we were all like a little freaked out about. And that guy so much reminded me of the guy that was in my room in the hostel after that CIA agent was there. It was some kind of weird situation. My bag, I thought something was missing. This guy's there. It was just very strange. I was in Ukraine, Russia, China prior to all of that too. So it was not me being stationed someplace. It was just a weird opportunity came to me, and I'm like, oh, I'll go and take that opportunity. And then the coincidences just lined me up to be at weird places where I was meeting people and doing very strange things. So
you think they were almost keeping tabs on you in a sense? Like, you seen them in the hostel, you seen them on this boat.
You have a track? Did they implant a tracker in you?
I imagined that. I don't think I did, but I was blacking out and I'm thinking, what the fuck is in the back of my head? Like, I have stitches on the back of my head, and I'm like, I don't remember. I watched the video of being shot at and stuff or whatever. Like, when the hell did I get hit in the back of the head? I didn't understand what was happening. And the guy, I'm like, why? When I blacked out and woke up, like the whole Moon Knight thing, I got an IV in my arm. And I'm like, why the hell do I have an IV in my arm? Like, this, I didn't lose blood, did I? Like, what the fuck is, they're like, you need this. And I'm like, and it was this weird doctor that looked like a male model in Colombia. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, it was the weirdest thing. Like, he was like 30 years old.
He looked like an actor playing a doctor.
Yes. And I'm just like, what the fuck?
Like Joey Tribbiani?
Like a Gucci model, like super attractive. I'm a straight guy, but I'm like, this guy is too good looking to be a shitty little doctor in Colombia. This doesn't make sense. And like the weird stuff that's going on with the police around me and stuff, I'm like, this is just bizarre. So
we can go to your Twitter and watch that video now.
Yeah, you can. And it's Supernatural Detectives on Twitter.
Cocky, look that up and post it in the chat when you get a chance.
Yeah.
Now, Johnny, I do want to kind of bring this back to your current work.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh. First off, the stuff that this is fascinating. Just absolutely fascinating. It seems like you're trying to make sense of just an absolutely nonsensical series of events.
Yeah.
And so how you've landed on this particular event as kind of your guiding principle, I think we could probably spend another hour talking about.
That's easy. Yeah. It's I'm a very sexual person myself. As a travel influencer, I had sex in every single city that I went to. I was meeting a girl, say, hey, I have a week here, you want to hang out? And we would just have sex for a while. And I would go to another city and meet somebody, and I'm like, this is not a bad life. And I was telling people about this, and they're like, oh, you should write about it on Instagram or something. I couldn't write the stories of the sexual content on Instagram. I would be
right. They just shut you down.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I just talk about it. But they're like, this stuff is so, I mean, like I had threesomes, foursomes, random girls enter a room, just crazy sexual experiences. And that's one of the reasons I was thinking about making porn, because I'm like, this would be so cool if I could just put this on X videos or Pornhub and have people watch what I was doing when I was randomly going into the city. And I thought that was really an idea, but I also had this like hesitation because I'm like, I'm professional. I wanted to remain an outstanding, member of the community, not looked at as a porn vagabond drifter. So I thought to myself, okay, being the travel influencer gives me a little bit more prestige and honor or something like that. After I had that incident in Colombia, I'm like, well, I can't go back to that life, because if anybody Googles my name, that's not going to happen anymore. So I thought to myself, all right, I'll make porn. And I started to do a comic book series that was integrating some of the ideas of me being some kind of like superhero porn star. And that was from the things that have experienced me. But I created this character called the Alpha on porn. And in the last little video that I made, I did a tie-in where I have a paranormal investigator come to check out what's happening with what happened in the scene. And we end up having sex. And I started thinking, okay, with paraphilia, people have sex in dangerous, spooky positions. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to go to the most haunted, craziest locations on the planet and fuck in them. I want to go and like make a porn in the most like, you can't stay alone.
The Winchester Mansion.
Yes. I want to be like banging away at that with somebody that's equally as paraphiliacs, or what's crazy sex experiment. And if I get some kind of reaction with a possessed individual or something like that, that's real, and they want to have sex, I would do it. Honestly, I would have sex with a possessed individual. If you ever have sex with crazy girls that are wild in bed, it's pretty much the same thing. So
I don't. I've been married since I was 24.
Oh yeah.
I've been having sex with one woman my whole life.
No, I've had sex with over 200 people, and I'm like, it's crazy people are generally the best in bed. So, and just imagining some like writhing, floating off the bed situation, I'd be like, okay, I could do this. Like,
so yeah, okay. So there is no Dana, only Zool. You're saying that's it?
Yeah, that situation in Ghostbusters, I would totally be into that. No, well, maybe if there's pus or like grossness or like, I'm not into that. But if they're like growling and scratching and crawling around the walls, I would probably be like, hell yeah, come over here. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, so you do spectrophilial investigations, and I wanted to bring up your website. So this is a map of the places that you have done investigations. It looks like you've done about 20 or so. Is that about right?
So these are your tourist attraction destinations. Now that map is actually, it's layered with different things. I'm going to be putting in demonic possession, classic hauntings, humanoid creatures, but I'm trying to stay with some cogency of supernatural sexual interactions. alien or extraterrestrial abductions of a sexual nature. I want to plot these things because I'm also cross-referencing it with electromagnetic energy in the area, the environmental conditions, the mineral deposits in the ground, the life forms that are present in the area. I'm trying to do a correlation with all of those things too. So these spots are classic haunting points. And honestly, I think the places that I've been to here, it's more they wanted to bring tourism to the area, so they created a legend. That's what it sounds like in a lot of these places. Because yes, people, if you're in Miami, South Florida, where I'm at, there's homicide level is super high. There would be a tremendous amount of hauntings if spirits were only positioned for the trauma of the death. I mean, it's much higher in the area that I'm in. So, but as far as like each one, there's the devil's playground or the devil's school, the devil's chair, the devil's tree. I grew up in Florida, and a lot of these things are like a bunch of kids in the neighborhood get spooked out about something, and then they create a little local legend or what are they called? Urban legend, and it just persists. And then you have people that just keep on making it grow by social media involvement. And what I'm doing is I'm going to do reenactments of sexual situations in each one, and then tag it in these locations. Because if you look up like the St. Augustine lighthouse, I'll go there and fuck on camera and put it on my porn channel and reenact the situation that happened in my writing and editing of it.
So are these places that you've done recordings, or they're just
it's no, like they're investigations. These are researched and investigations. They're not filmed yet.
Okay. So it's like a wish list.
More like homework.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's
so
as far as homework goes, though.
We had a guest a couple weeks ago, George Mitrovic, and he has done some very comprehensive work as far as documenting places where there's been UFO sightings and Bigfoot sightings. He's done like 80 books in like the last, how many years? It wasn't even that many years, was it, Kyle?
No, he did it real quick.
Like 4 or 5 years. He's done 80 books in like 4 or 5 years. He's got like, you said he had Asperger's, right?
Yes.
So he's just got a very, very powerful brain as far as organization and data goes. But I would say you probably should look into some of his work to find more locations like this. He's in Australia, but his books are readily available. Anyway,
have you ever heard of the crime map?
I have heard of crime maps. I don't know that I've heard of
crime maps. So crime maps. Basically, it's a real-time plotting system for criminal activity. What I'd like to do is have a collaboration with multiple organizations to create one for paranormal activity.
Yeah.
So it's real time. It's not, hey, go here after the fact. This call came in. This happened. On my website, I have a call reporting system, but you have to pay to use it. And the reason I did this is to qualify people, because you would not imagine how many crazy individuals call, or kids that are pranking or trolling, if you just leave your phone number and your contact information out there. So if you go,
so this is your website, and if you scroll down to the bottom, report now, and it's got the $sign with it.
Yep. So that's on every page. And then if you go to the contact us page, it gives you a little bit of more info on that. But that basically is, you get a text message for $10. Your description lasts about 5 minutes to describe what your encounter was. And if I deem it worthy, I'll come in and I'll investigate. It
also says free investigations for your OnlyFans subscribers.
Yes. So with the OnlyFans subscription, if you're on there and I'm communicating with you, I'm probably doing my due diligence and researching you and cyber stalking you a little bit to figure out if you're legit. And if you're in my region, I don't have a problem coming out and doing something. But realistically, I'm going to be a little bit picky on that. If people have some kind of situation, I'd like to see it verified or some kind of like a little bit of fact checking from another individual too. So a little bit more thorough reporting.
A little bit of science.
Yeah. So that's how it works with the reporting. On my social media, I won't reply to you unless you go to my LinkedIn page and you're a paranormal professional. So I will not talk to you unless you are a paranormal professional on the LinkedIn page, or you're reporting through the system and you want to actually legitimately say something. Because
so if anybody's interested, the website is www.supernaturaldetectives.com. There's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek name that you call your detectives dicks, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Which I think is absolutely appropriate.
Yeah. If you look at the description on that, it says our dicks are always hard at work working on large caseloads. So I'm like, totally
I love it.
Fun. Yeah, it's fun. As far as the breadth and width of what I'd be investigating, honestly, it's going to have to be narrowed down to that field. But I do want to have answers to what happened in my own life, and I have, excuse me, my two running theories, which are I'm sensitive to EMF, and there's some kind of microbiological connection with phenomenon. So that's what I'm researching. And I've looked into the science behind microbiology too, with authors and books and researchers around the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was checking out that video.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you?
It's like this chaotic scene, and you're like, there's like police by you, and you're like strapped down, and like there's like blood all over your face, and
yeah. I don't remember. I edited that down. That was 40 minutes from all the clips that I found on the web or something. And it was traumatizing watching it for the first time. And I didn't feel good about it because I was ashamed and felt embarrassed because I don't remember what was going on. And people just completely alienated me from that. So when I was looking at myself bleeding and stuff, I'm like, I remember seeing a man or two men standing in front of me, kind of like both hands on the pistol.
Is it all right if we put this up right now?
It's a little shocking, but you could put it up there. I mean,
I'll turn it down a bit. We'll just do silent. But this is on your Twitter.
Yeah.
That's you. Who's taking the video?
These are all. So one of the reasons that nothing happened to me is the Colombian government messed up and they put my passport and my ID full width on their media display, and it was a diplomatic nightmare to deal with all this stuff. So they just said, get them out of our hair, and our government just took me back, and they deported me. Mind you, they told the media, or the media's story is that I was trying to get a free ride home or something like that, and that I was trying to get myself arrested, which didn't make sense at all for what had happened. So that was pretty crazy, and yeah, I don't even like watching it myself. I'm like, ugh, that's. And then remember the little blips of things that were happening. But when I left, everything was stolen that I had, and the liaison for the U.S. Embassy brought me some clothes, and she was totally like messing with me. Do you know the TV series Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
She gave me a T-shirt to do interviews and to leave the country that said, "I'm not in danger, I am the danger." So that was pretty bizarre.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah, so-
Johnny, it has been an absolute roller coaster speaking with you. It has been incredible. I would love to have you come back on the show and talk some more, and hopefully we can talk a little bit more about the investigations themselves, and maybe you can maybe we can piece together some of your experiences. But absolutely fantastic. If anybody's out there, I'll put up the website if you're interested in helping Johnny in his quest to create the largest library of spectrophilial video encounters. Please contact him at supernaturaldetectives.com. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate all our viewers who tuned in during the live stream. And please make sure that you are not on a no-fly list now. Because you have just been, this is a real life Jason Bourne / Jason Porn. And
yeah.
And we have loved having you on the show, Johnny. Can't wait to have you back. Do you have any upcoming projects that people should be aware of?
At the moment, I'm going to be trying to get it together with Stormy Daniels. I met her at a porn convention, and she's actually on a paranormal investigation show called Spooky Babes. And she asked me to come out to LA to do a screen test with her, or not her, but someone. And we might do some collaborations for the crossover for what we have, because we're both very much in line with what I'm talking about here.
For sure. Well, good luck to you on that. And we look forward to seeing that, well, as much as we can.
For sure, Sam. Pleasure. Kyle. Awesome.
And with that, keep on exploring the edges of the unknown.